The group call started at 6:02 p.m. Kendra's face filled the screen first. Flawless makeup, long blonde hair curled like she'd stepped out of a catalog. Behind her, I could see the white marble counters of their kitchen, wine glasses already lined up like a magazine shoot. Her brother Aaron was in the background, tossing a lime into the air. Aunt Marie was off to the side, flipping through a travel brochure. I adjusted the angle of my laptop camera and sat up straighter. My apartment was dim and quiet. Nothing glamorous, just a rental studio with a couch I'd reupholstered myself and a muted watercolor painting behind me. The meeting title had read simply, Family Summer Trip. They say if you've ever been betrayed by family, hitting like brings peace, subscribing brings clarity, and commenting brings karma to those who wronged you. Try it, and tell me where you're watching from. Anyways, I hadn't even known they were planning one until the invitation popped up 2 hours before the call. I clicked in anyway. Kendra beamed. Hey, Nicolette, glad you could make it. I smiled. Of course. What's the plan? Aaron leaned into the frame, grinning. Tulum, baby, full week, private suites, direct beach access. Aunt Marie added, We've already booked the flights. Found a great group rate. I blinked. Wait, you already booked everything? Kendra paused for half a second before smoothing her tone. Oh yeah, we just locked it down this morning. Everything was going so fast, and we figured we had to act quick or we'd lose the deal. I kept my voice level. Was I supposed to book separately? Kendra hesitated again. Then she said, We kind of assumed. I mean, it's a little pricey. We didn't want to pressure you into it. Aaron smirked. Yeah, with all the upgrades, it's not exactly budget travel. I felt something tighten in my chest. Kendra added quickly, We just thought maybe this wasn't your thing. These trips are kind of better when it's just, the core group. The core group. They weren't being overtly cruel, just surgical, rehearsed, polite rejection disguised as consideration. I nodded once. Right, of course. Kendra smiled, satisfied. We're still finalizing the dinner reservations. I can send you some pics after. Sure, I said. That'd be nice. They went back to chatting, excited, laughing, tossing around drink orders and outfit ideas. I muted myself, watched them like a spectator at someone else's celebration. After a few minutes, I said I had to go. Kendra waved. Okay, babe. No hard feelings, right? None, I said. I clicked leave call before my voice could break. The screen went dark. I sat there a moment longer, letting the quiet sink in. It wasn't the first time they'd left me out. It was just the first time they hadn't bothered to pretend it was an accident. I reached for my laptop again and opened a browser. In the reflection on the screen, I could still see the flicker of Kendra's background. Sunlight, sea blue branding on a travel brochure, and one distinctive name across the cover. Sunset Cliffs Retreat. I typed it in. My heart knocked once in my chest, but I kept my hands steady. There it was, the resort's site, private villas, adults-only pool, executive chef, ocean view suites. It was a dream vacation, the kind they always chased, the kind they never imagined I could afford. But I knew something they didn't. I pulled up my investor portal. One alert sat waiting, flagged with a green star. Sunset Cliffs acquisition is finalized. Ownership transfer scheduled. New majority stakeholder pending final sign-off. Confirmation required. I stared at the message, read it twice. Then I clicked review agreement. The deal had been in motion for months, part of a quiet expansion of properties I'd been helping transition into tech-integrated boutique resort experiences. My name wasn't on the headlines. I preferred it that way. But I knew the numbers. I knew the teams. I knew exactly what Sunset Cliffs was about to become. And now I knew who would be standing at the check-in desk when my family arrived. I sat back in my chair and folded my arms. No hard feelings, I whispered. Then I picked up the phone. "Hi, it's Nicolette DeLuca," I said. "Yes, I reviewed the file. Let's move forward. Full ownership. But I'd like to stay off the welcome materials for now." There was a pause on the other end. "Quiet control?" my contact asked. I smiled. "Exactly," I said. "No announcements, no press, just let me know when they check in." And I closed the laptop. There was a time when I did work reception. Red vest, name tag, corporate script memorized down to the punctuation.
Welcome to Seabreeze Villas. Checking in with us today? Your room will be ready shortly. Is there anything else I can assist you with? Smiling while drenched in humidity. Smiling while cleaning up spilled drinks. Smiling while being ignored. I was 19, a full-time hospitality student with 2 part-time jobs and a dorm room I barely slept in. I worked the desk by day and housekeeping on weekends. Some nights I cried behind the linen cart. Other nights I studied for exams while folding towels in the back room. I didn't have connections. I didn't have family support. I had a mom who worked double shifts at a pharmacy and a scholarship that barely covered textbooks. But I learned. I learned how to memorize preferences, how to read moods before guests open their mouths. I learned that the most powerful person in the room wasn't always the one wearing the suit, but often the one who made sure everyone got what they came for. By the time I graduated, I knew the business inside out. I didn't just know how resorts functioned. I knew where they failed. And I had ideas. The startup was never meant to be flashy, just useful. An operations and booking platform that helped boutique hotels manage reservations, automate scheduling, streamline guest services. I built the prototype myself at a coffee shop with borrowed Wi-Fi. I pitched it to 25 investors. 24 said no. 1 said, "Let's see what happens." 6 years later, I sold the company for just under 8 figures. I didn't celebrate with champagne. I paid off my mom's mortgage and disappeared from the online founder circuit before the press could write a headline about the quiet woman with a quiet win. After the sale, I kept my shares in a few resorts I'd personally helped modernize. Properties in Costa Rica, Belize, Tulum, and the Keys. They were small enough to be overlooked by the luxury giants, but intimate enough to leave lasting impressions. Sunset Cliffs Retreat had been on our radar for months. The owners were retiring, bookings were declining. The location was pristine, but the systems were outdated. I made a discreet offer through one of our equity partners and finalized the due diligence quietly. And then, just days after my cousin Kendra told me I was too poor to come on the trip, I closed the deal. The timing was pure poetry. But I didn't tell anyone, not even my mom. The new general manager asked if I wanted to be listed as an active owner for guest check-ins. I said, "No. Keep me off everything guest-facing." He asked, "Would you like a title listed internally?" For staff protocol, I said, "Just call me Ms. DeLuca. I'll be on site." I wasn't angry. I wasn't looking for applause. I just wanted to be there when they arrived. Smiling, calm, unnoticed until it mattered. The day before their check-in, I flew down on a red-eye. The resort was already better. The staff had received their onboarding packets with the new digital interface I'd helped design. The front desk area had been refreshed with soft lighting, elegant signage, touchless check-in terminals. Nothing flashy, just clean and dignified. I walked the grounds with the assistant manager, inspecting the bungalows, the pool deck, the newly installed beachside canopy lounge. "Everything's on track," she said. "The team's excited." I said, "Good. Let's keep things quiet." She smiled. "Understood." In my room, Villa number 1, furthest from the main path, I sat by the open windows and watched the surf. There was no nameplate on my door, no welcome gift, just a handwritten note from the property director. "Thank you for believing in this place. We're ready." The next morning, I slipped into a pressed linen blouse and flats. No designer tags, no makeup, no drama. I walked behind the front desk just before noon, just as the sun reached its highest point. The assistant manager handed me a clipboard. Their party's scheduled to arrive in 15 minutes. I nodded. I'll check them in personally. She blinked. You sure? I said. Positive. 15 minutes later, the shuttle van pulled up. Laughter poured out first, followed by overpacked luggage and matching sunglasses. Kendra stepped out in a wide-brimmed hat, heels wobbling slightly on the stone path. Aaron wore swim trunks and an open button-down, already shirtless beneath. Aunt Marie followed behind with a clutch under one arm and a drink order on her tongue. Kendra said, "This place looks better than the photos." Aaron added, "Finally, someplace that doesn't smell like sunscreen and sadness." They breezed through the lobby doors like royalty. The concierge smiled. A bellhop greeted them with fresh towels and mocktails. I stood at the terminal, calm and invisible, until I spoke. "Welcome to Sunset Cliffs," I said. "Checking in under Lancaster?" Kendra turned at the sound of my voice. Her eyes widened. "Nicolette?" Kendra asked. I smiled, professional and even. "Welcome. We've been expecting you." Aaron muttered, "Wait, do you work here now?" I didn't answer right away, just scanned the form and handed over their keys. "Your Ocean View Premier Suite is ready," I said. "Feel free to enjoy complimentary beach access, the infinity pool, and the adults-only bar. Sunset yoga begins at 6. Kendra blinked. "You're serious?" I said. "Something like that." She stared at me for a moment, waiting for an explanation. But I didn't offer one, because I didn't need to. They thought I still worked reception, and in a way I did. But this time, I owned the desk. The morning they arrived, the sun rose clean and cloudless. No wind, no rush of tourists. Just the sound of the tide brushing the shore like it had somewhere better to be. I'd been at the resort since dawn, walking the property with the assistant manager, checking details no one else would think to notice. Water pressure, lighting angles in the lobby, whether the cushions at the lounge chairs were fluffed evenly. Every staff member I passed greeted me by name. "Good morning, Ms. DeLuca. Everything's ready, Ms. DeLuca." I nodded, gave a quiet thank you, kept moving. I wasn't wearing anything flashy, just a fitted linen blouse tucked into tailored slacks and flat sandals. No logo, no jewelry. My hair pulled back. Professional, clean, intentional. No one would recognize me as the girl who used to wait by the discount airline gate with plastic luggage and headphones she'd patched with duct tape. And I didn't want them to. Not yet. By 11:30 a.m., the resort was prepped and gleaming. Room keys organized. Welcome drinks lined up behind the bar. Staff positioned discreetly, but alert. A soft playlist played in the background, curated to match the morning sun. Then came the call from reception. The Lancaster family had just passed the main gate. I walked to the check-in desk, clipboard in hand, calm, ready. I took my position behind the polished counter, nodded to the concierge, and kept my gaze fixed on the entrance. The shuttle doors slid open. The first thing I heard was laughter. Loud, performative. Then came the clatter of overstuffed rolling bags and the click of designer sandals on stone. Kendra stepped inside first, sunglasses oversized, a silk scarf tied dramatically around her neck. Kendra said, "Wow, this place actually looks decent." Aaron followed behind, pulling his luggage with one hand and sipping from a can in the other. Aaron said, "Is this the kind of place with a signature drink or whatever? I need something cold before I combust." Aunt Marie came last, her wide straw hat tipping slightly as she stepped into the cool lobby air. Kendra walked up to the counter confidently, scanning the space with a half smirk. Kendra said, "We have the Ocean View Premier Suite under Lancaster." I looked up. Her eyes met mine. For a moment, nothing moved. Then she blinked, twice. Kendra said, "Nicolette?" I gave a small nod. "Welcome," I said, steady and calm. "Your suite is ready." Kendra didn't speak right away. I could see the gears turning. Her jaw twitched. Her lips parted like she might laugh, but couldn't quite decide if it was appropriate. Aaron stepped closer, squinting. Aaron said, "Wait. Do you work here now?" I handed over the room key, sliding it smoothly across the counter. I said, "Something like that." The assistant manager walked past just then, offering a warm smile. The assistant manager said, "Ms. DeLuca, we're ready for the midday team briefing when you are." I nodded. "I'll be there shortly." Kendra's head turned like she was following a slow-motion scene in a movie. She looked back at me, the corner of her mouth twitching. Kendra whispered, "What is going on?" I simply said, "Your room is Suite 3A, ocean view, corner balcony, breakfast included. If you need anything, the front desk is available 24 hours. Aaron said, "You're serious?" I didn't reply. Aunt Marie stepped forward, trying to salvage the moment. Aunt Marie said, "It's good to see you, Nicolette." I said, "Likewise. I hope you enjoy your stay." They stood there for another second, unsure whether to question me further or pretend everything was normal. I watched them retreat toward the elevators. Kendra turned once, glancing back at the desk, but I was already looking past her, clipboard in hand, moving on. No raised voice, no mic drop, just quiet, measured control. I hadn't come here to gloat, but I had come to be seen. And now, they couldn't look away. They didn't figure it out all at once. It started slowly, first with glances, then with whispers, until reality finally caught up with the story they'd written about me. On their first full day at the resort, I passed them on the way to the morning staff meeting. Kendra was lounging on a sunbed near the infinity pool, oversized sunglasses on, a neon drink in her hand. She spotted me walking across the upper deck and gave a stiff nod, more curious than warm. The general manager stepped out of the conference room just ahead of me. The general manager said, "Ms. DeLuca, the expansion proposal is ready when you are." He said it casually, like he always did. Like the title belonged to me. I saw Kendra flinch. Later that afternoon, I walked into the back office and found the concierge team reviewing the new digital guest feedback system I'd implemented. I gave notes, asked about guest satisfaction, and reviewed check-in times for a VIP group arriving the next morning. Through the frosted office glass, I caught a glimpse of my family moving through the lobby. Aaron stopped at the front desk, trying to negotiate an upgrade for one of his friends who had arrived unannounced. Aaron said, "You can check with the manager, right?" "I know the girl who runs the place." The receptionist smiled. "That would be Ms. DeLuca," Aaron blinked. The receptionist added, "She's currently in a meeting." Aaron said nothing. He walked away without the upgrade. That evening, I hosted a quiet dinner with 2 international investors on the private terrace above the main lounge. We shared a meal of grilled snapper and local wine as we discussed green initiatives and remote hospitality tech. It
wasn't about showing off. It was just business. Business I had spent the last decade building. From my seat, I could see my aunt and cousins dining below on the patio. Aunt Marie stared for a while, fork paused midair. Kendra turned in her seat to get a better look, sunglasses pushed down just enough to see over them. They didn't wave. Neither did I. The staff treated me with consistent reverence, but never over the top. They knew I didn't like fanfare. They called me Ms. DeLuca in public, Nicolette in private, and always with a tone of earned respect. The family watched it all happen. They watched me greet the head chef with a hug. They watched the yoga instructor ask for my feedback. They watched a regional magazine journalist interview me about sustainable luxury in the courtyard. No one said anything at first. But the silence grew heavier by the hour. On the 3rd night, just after sunset, I sat on the upper terrace sipping chamomile tea alone. The lanterns had been lit. The tide murmured below. It had been a long, full day, and I felt it, not in the form of exhaustion, but in a kind of settled calm. Footsteps approached. I didn't turn until I heard her voice. Kendra said, "You could have told us." I looked up. She stood there barefoot, arms crossed over a thin cardigan, her face unreadable. I said, "Told you what?" Kendra answered, "That you own the place. That you're this." I didn't respond. Kendra shifted her weight. "I mean, I thought you worked reception." I said, "I know." She walked to the railing, looked out at the water. Kendra said, "So this was revenge? Inviting us here just to watch us squirm?" I shook my head. "I didn't invite you. You booked the trip." She didn't speak for a moment. Then she asked quietly, "Why didn't you say anything?" I looked out at the horizon, let the question settle between us. I said, "Because I didn't come to prove anything. I came to make sure you had a nice stay." Kendra blinked. "That's it?" I nodded. She turned, ready to leave, but stopped halfway. Kendra said, "You're different now." I said, "No. You're just seeing me clearly for the first time." She didn't answer. She walked away without another word. I stayed on the terrace until the candles burned low and the tide crept closer to the shoreline. And I let the silence stretch into something peaceful, because I'd spent years trying to be seen. Now I didn't need to be. They were finally looking anyway. The next morning, I found Kendra waiting by the espresso bar. She wasn't in her usual sunglasses or matching resort set. Just a loose tunic and flats. Still polished, but subdued, like someone rehearsing humility. Kendra said, "Hey, do you have a second?" I nodded. "Sure." She stepped aside as the barista handed me my drink. Kendra said, "So, the rooms. Ours is great, obviously, but we heard there's a newer suite available, one of the cliffside ones with the expanded balcony." I took a slow sip of my coffee. "There is." Kendra smiled a little too quickly. "Could we maybe switch into that, just for the last 2 nights? Erin's been complaining about the view, and Aunt Marie said her mattress is too firm." I looked at her. She added, "You know, since you have pull." And I figured, now that we're all caught up, it's not a big deal. I kept my voice level. "The cliffside suite's already taken." Kendra tilted her head. "Really?" I nodded. "Booked yesterday." She hesitated, then leaned in slightly. Kendra said, "Come on, Nicolette. You're family." I looked at her, calm as ever. I said, "You made it clear I wasn't." Kendra blinked. I added, "You said it was better without me, remember?" "The core group." Her expression shifted, an instinctive flicker of shame, quickly buried under practiced neutrality. Kendra said, "That was before I knew this." I said, "Exactly." She didn't say anything else, just smoothed her sleeve and turned toward the dining patio. Later that afternoon, I stood at the front desk reviewing guest notes when I saw a woman at the counter, nervously shifting her toddler from one hip to the other while trying to juggle a backpack and a stroller. Her name was Rosa, solo traveler, single mother of 2. She had booked a basic room through a third-party discount site, but a system glitch had bumped her family into a twin-bed suite instead of the one with proper sleeping arrangements. The concierge looked apologetic, but overwhelmed. I stepped in. I said, "Rosa?" "I'm Nicolette. Would you mind coming with me for a moment?" She looked worried, but followed. I led her through the garden path and stopped in front of the cliffside suite. I unlocked the door and opened it for her. She blinked. Rosa said, "This isn't mine." I said, "It is now."
Rosa whispered, "But I didn't pay." I said, "You don't need to. We'd rather your children have the space. The view's good for growing minds." She wiped her eyes with one hand while the baby clung to the other. Rosa said, "I don't know what to say." I said, "Just enjoy your stay." That evening, I walked past the family dining area on my way to the private balcony above the restaurant. Kendra was seated near the window, mid-conversation, when she caught sight of Rosa and her 2 kids stepping onto the cliffside terrace. Rosa held her toddler's hand as the older child skipped excitedly toward the railing. I saw Kendra follow them with her eyes, then turn toward me as I passed. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. I continued on. Dinner was a simple seared salmon with a chilled cucumber salad. The tablecloth was white linen, the breeze warm and quiet. I ate alone, as I preferred. No cameras, no explanations, no performance. Just peace. I didn't need to impress anyone. Because I'd already become the person I once needed most. And no upgrade could compete with that. It was their last full day at the resort. The weather held beautifully. Clear skies, calm breeze, just the right kind of heat. The kind of day that made people forget everything that wasn't right in front of them. I took the morning slow, walking the perimeter of the property in flats and linen, clipboard tucked under my arm more from habit than necessity. From a distance, I saw them. Aaron was throwing a frisbee with a group of other guests near the beach. Aunt Marie was sitting on a lounge chair beneath a wide umbrella, book in hand but gaze drifting. Kendra sat near her, legs curled beneath her, sipping something bright orange and watching the waves without speaking. They looked happy, or at least relaxed, and somehow it didn't sting the way I thought it might. I didn't feel angry, just tired. A little surprised by how little I needed from them now. Still, I wasn't expecting Aunt Marie to approach. I was standing near the herb garden, checking that the signage for our new culinary class was correctly posted. She walked up slowly, her sandals quiet on the flagstone path. Aunt Marie said, "Nicolette." I turned. "Hi, Aunt Marie." She offered a half smile. "I've been meaning to ask you something." I waited. Aunt Marie said, "Is this your new job?" I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" She looked around the resort, the pool, the open-air restaurant just beyond the trellises. Aunt Marie said, This place. Are you managing it? Consulting?" I let the question sit for a moment before answering. I said, "No. I own it." Her eyebrows lifted slightly, but she didn't respond right away. I continued. "It's one of 5 properties I'm involved with. I co-founded a tech company that helps boutique resorts streamline operations. We scaled, sold, and I kept equity in a few locations I believed in. Sunset Cliffs was one of them." Aunt Marie exhaled. "I had no idea." I said, "That was the point." She lowered her voice. "We didn't mean to. Well, I didn't realize how far you'd come. I think we all assumed—" She trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. I said, "You assumed I was still behind a desk, folding towels or swiping room keys." Aunt Marie said, "Something like that." I gave a small nod, but didn't offer reassurance. She shifted her weight and glanced toward the lounge deck. "Kendra's been quiet. She's not sure what to say to you." I said, "She doesn't have to say anything." Aunt Marie nodded, then gently added, "She's trying." That word, trying, lingered. Later that afternoon, I sat on a bench near the garden where we were building a new meditation path. The jasmine vines had started to climb the trellis. I watched the shadows move. Kendra appeared, her sandals in one hand, the other gripping her phone loosely. She stopped a few feet away. Kendra said, "You've been hard to catch." "Hard." I said, "I've been here the whole time." She smiled faintly. "Yeah, I guess you have." She sat beside me without asking. We sat in silence for a while, the kind that wasn't exactly comfortable but not sharp either. Kendra said, "So, all of this? You've been building it for how long?" I replied, "Over a decade, if you count from the first day I worked a hotel front desk." Kendra turned toward me, her voice low. "I thought you were stuck." I didn't answer. She added, "I didn't know you were building something." I looked ahead. "You didn't need to know," Kendra said, but I didn't have to laugh either. That stopped me. Just for a second. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest she'd ever come to looking at her own reflection. I didn't let her off the hook. I didn't rush in to say it's okay, because it hadn't been. I let the pause hold. Then I said, "No, you didn't." She looked down at her hands. Kendra said, "You were always quiet." I guess I thought that meant small. I said, "A lot of people confuse the two." Another silence, softer this time. Then she said, "I'm sorry." I didn't flinch. I didn't offer her a way out. I just said, "Have a safe trip home." She nodded, stood, and walked away barefoot across the grass, sandals still dangling from her fingers. She didn't look back, and I didn't need her to. Checkout was at noon. By 10:30, the lobby was filled with the usual departure energy. Zipped suitcases, quick glances at phones, voices half raised in coordination. The Lancaster family was no exception. Kendra hovered near the concierge, double-checking their airport transfer. Aaron was scrolling through his phone, muttering something about mileage points. Aunt Marie adjusted her scarf in the mirror. I stood quietly behind the front desk, sipping my espresso as the front-of-house team took care of them. Kendra looked over once, just briefly. She didn't say anything, but she nodded. I nodded back. That was enough. The family left with polite goodbyes to the staff, a few handshakes, some thank yous. Then the van pulled away, wheels crunching down the gravel path. And just like that, they were gone. I stepped outside, the warm midday air brushing against my face. The silence they left behind wasn't empty. It was clean, peaceful. I kicked off my sandals and walked the stone path toward the beach. My second cup of coffee steamed in my hand, the ceramic warm between my fingers. The resort stretched behind me like a world I had finally stepped into fully. Not borrowed, not begged for. Mine. I passed the meditation garden, now fully open to guests. A few guests were already in downward dog on the shaded mats. A gentle wind rustled the trees. Near the edge of the infinity pool, Rosa and her 2 children were checking out. The little boy saw me and lit up. The boy said, "Ms. Nicolette." I smiled. "You're heading home?" Rosa nodded. "We are. Thank you again. Really." The girl hugged me tight around the waist before running off to chase her brother. Rosa said, "We'll never forget this place. Or you." I touched her shoulder lightly. "Safe travels." As they walked away, I watched them blend into the steady rhythm of guests departing, new ones arriving, luggage wheeling, sea breezes wrapping around stone and sky. I turned toward the beach and kept walking. The sand was still cool near the water. My toes sank in with each step. The coffee was nearly gone, but I held it anyway, just for the warmth of it. Every few yards, a staff member waved. "Morning, Ms. DeLuca," said Mateo, the gardener. I said, "Morning." I walked past the shaded daybeds and onto the open shore, where the waves touched the edge of everything I had once only dreamed of. And then I stopped. Let it all settle in. The memory came, uninvited, but I let it play. Kendra's voice on that call. Kendra said, "It's kind of expensive." We didn't think it made sense to ask. That wasn't even the worst part. It was the laughter that followed. The way no one corrected her. The way they all silently agreed. Too poor to come. Too poor to be included. Too poor to matter. But that wasn't the truth, was it? It never had been. I was never too poor. I was just too quiet for them to notice I was building something. Too silent to be taken seriously. Too humble to demand a seat at a table they assumed was never mine to begin with. And now? Now the table was mine. The house too. And the ocean that ran beside it. But more than that, the choice was mine. I could have made them feel small. I could have turned them away. But that would have made me just like them. Instead, I let them stay. I let them see. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. Because they needed to understand something I had known for years. Respect can't be demanded. It's earned. And once you earn it, once you become someone you're proud of, there's no going back. I took one last sip of coffee, then tossed the empty cup into the small bamboo bin nestled near the rocks. The tide crept up, brushing my feet. The water was cold, honest. I breathed in. No rush, no weight on my shoulders, no apologies owed. I smiled, just to myself. And I said aloud, softly, because there was no one left to perform for. Turns out I wasn't too poor to join the trip. I just stopped needing an invitation.